It's your girl, Lady Forex, and I'm here with another video. Welcome to Mirroring Your Pair 2.0. So, the thing with trading is just not about getting on finding a currency pair and getting on a chart and putting in a buy or a sell based off of maybe the candles you see or just what's in front of you. It really takes a lot of analysis, it takes strategies, it takes a lot of other components into making a successful trader. Many people always talk about just making money, and you can very well make money in this market. However, you want to make sure you're learning the basic concepts that you will need, the fundamentals that you will need that you can put together and build upon so that you can understand what you're actually seeing in the charts, and therefore you'll be able to determine what moves you should be making. So this video is going to concentrate on a type of strategy, but it's a strategy to get to know your specific pair. As a beginner, I suggest that you find one, two, maybe even three pairs that you want to concentrate on, and you really learn those pairs. And a good way of learning pairs is to look at how they move. You want to look at when they move and look for different patterns. So a great way to look for patterns is to look at historical data. And in order to look at historical data, we use a strategy called backtesting. So today I'm going to show you a strategy on how to backtest your pair, and therefore you can learn a lot of information about it. So here we have a basic chart. This is GU. Now, typically GU moves during certain zones, or not zones, time frames, let's say, because the British pound against the US dollar. So typically it's going to really move during your London session and your New York session. The London session and the New York session does overlap if you are unaware of that. London session starts about 3 a.m. Eastern and goes to 11 a.m. Eastern. The New York session starts at 8 a.m. Eastern and goes to about 5 p.m. Eastern. So they do have a couple of hours there where they overlap. So that is good information to know when you're trying to figure out how to backtest your pair. So the strategy, I will tell you the different indicators I use and how I map it out so that you can understand and break down your pair based off historical data. So first thing you want to do is you want to start off with the 1 hour time frame. I use this time frame because it's easier to break down the candles and to break down the days. Once you do that, you want to go to the chart properties and you want to put on your session breaks. So if you go to chart settings and you go under appearance, you want to click for session breaks and click OK. This basically divides all the days, the candles between days. So each candle between these white dotted lines is 24 candles, which represents one day. So that's why I do it that way for the 1 hour time frame, because it breaks it down pretty clearly for you. The second thing you want to do after you put on your session breaks is you want to use an indicator, which is an awesome one that breaks down the candles and the chart into different sessions. And we break it down into the three main sessions, which is the New York session, the Asian session, and the London session. So if you go under indicators and you just find that under this FX indicators box right here, you click on that. And under built-ins, you want to type in sessions. Now there's many different indicators that you can use, but I use this one, Sessions, Asian, London, New York colored. And you just click on it and it will add it to your chart. Let's click out of here. In order to look at the colors or to adjust it, you want to come over and hover over sessions right here on your left. And you want to go to the little settings icon. Click that. Here you can see that the colors are already broken down. What I like to do is I like to make them a little less see-through so that they stick out a little bit. So I take it to about 25%, 25, 26, that's fine. so that the colors stick out on my chart. And I do that for each session. So the next thing I do is I also make a kind of like color-coded keys, for lack of better words, on my chart so that I know which color represents what. So Asia is blue, London is green, and New York is red. So I'm going to go ahead and take my text box and I'm going to just add that text in there. So Asia is blue, London is green, and then you have New York, which is red. And if you look at the chart, you'll also notice that you see an orange color, and that is basically the overlap of London and New York. So I'll let that know so that I know for myself. So now you have this key over here that you can always refer back to instead of having to go back into the actual settings to see, now that you know which session you're looking at. So basically, if you looked at my first video, we're going to be basically doing the same thing. What you want to do is you want to basically look for big impulse moves, something similar to this, so that you know when they're making these big moves in the market. So I find the impulse moves on each day and I start to label them. So the first thing I do is I want to know how many pips has moved. Usually for between a scalper and an intraday, you look for a certain amount of pips. Me personally, I like to look for moves that can be bigger. So I'm looking for usually over 20, 30 pips. So this one, so for me to understand it as a significant move. So this one is 76 pips. So that's an awesome move right there. So I measure it and I make a note of that. So this move to 76 pips. And then I want to know around what time did this move. So in order to do that, if you have your crosshair, you just want to go over and hover over the candlestick. And if you come down to the bottom, it tells you the time when this candlestick formed. This candlestick formed at 7 a.m. Okay, and then I like to make a box just so it sticks out on my chart that covers the move. So now I know that this moved 76 pips around, and it started around 7 a.m. And the other thing that you want to do is to, if it helps you, it helps me. I like to be very clear when I'm marking up my charts and back testing. I like to label the days so that I know for myself what days I'm typically looking at, because that's important as well when you're looking at what days you should be trading or what days are most profitable. Some people only trade on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays because that is that day that most pairs are most volatile. Some only trade on Mondays and Tuesdays, whatever the case is. This helps you to determine what days may be best for you based on the pair that you're trading. So typically I do a month, but I'm only going to do a week for the sake of the video. So what you want to do is you just want to label each day so that you can tell which day it's moving. Okay, so now that I label my week, I can continue to label each day. So again, I'm looking for an impulse move. This one looks pretty good. This one was 46 pips, so that's a good move right there. So again, I'm going to label it. And I can just move the text box aside. I'm going to hover over the first candle like so. And this occurred at 3 a.m. And you just continue to do this for each day. I label it, then I make a box just so that that sticks out when I'm going back and looking at it and studying it for my own use. And you want to look for each day. Here, this looks like a good one. This is 42 pips. Here, you don't really want to include this because right here it starts to consolidate. If I make it a little bigger, you can see that it starts to consolidate in this area. You can even bring down the impost to here, but it consolidate a little bit right here. So I'm just going to take it from this candle on up until it starts to consolidate. So that's about 42 pips. So again, I'm going to take my text box, 42 pips. And if you hover over the candlestick that first formed it, it was at around 3 a.m. Now, once you start marking up these charts, you will start to see patterns. And one of the patterns that you may see and that you should take notice is that most impulse moves are done within certain sessions. And those sessions usually coincide with the currencies that you're looking at. So let's continue to mark this up, and then we can go over that really quickly, okay? So again, I'm going to take my ruler over here, and I'm going to measure this impulse move right here. This one's 48, then it consolidated, and then look, it started another impulse move. And this one was about 50 pips. So sometimes you may have that where you'll have two impulse in the same day, and that's perfectly fine. And that's something that you really want to know when you're trying to figure out when you should be trading your pair. And this one started around 1800. Now, the other thing you want to notice is it is in military time. So 1800 will basically be about 6 o'clock p.m. And then I'm just going to take my box. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 4. That should be 4. No, I had it right, 6. Yep, 6 p.m. So you're just basically going to count from 12 o'clock if you're not familiar with military time. So 1 o'clock would be 1300 hours, and then you would count on from that point. Okay. So for the next move, I think we said it was about 50 pips, right? And I'm just going to continue to do the same thing I've done for everything else. You're going to do 50 pips. And we're going to see the time, which is started. I go for this one. And that was at 8 a.m. And I'm going to take the box and cover that. So we'll do it one more time for the sake of this video. Let's take this uptrend. It's about 54 pips. And that was about 9 a.m. Okay. So now that we've labeled the week, we can go back and look and see what it is telling us. So the purpose of the color-coded sessions, it just helps you to verify and makes it clearer what sessions these pairs are moving in. So again, if we go back and we get our key over here, our color key, Asia is in the blue, London session is in the green. As I said, they overlap. So that's why you see the orange, because green and red makes orange. And that is the time where you're basically in both the New York and the London session, and then it turns into just the New York session. So we're looking at GU. We have the British pound against the US dollar. The British pound usually moves in during the London session, and obviously the the US dollar would move during New York. As you can see in this first one on Monday, it started moving during the overlap. So it starts at 9 a.m. Remember, London session goes to 11 a.m. And it moved throughout the New York session pretty much before it started consolidating. Now here on Tuesday, it did another impulse during the Asian session. Now please be mindful, just because it's not during that session for that pair to most likely move does not mean that there is no movement. Sometimes news can move it, sometimes events or anything that's going on that will impact that certain currency pair can move it. So don't just assume that just because it's GU and it typically moves during London and New York, that is the only time that you will see movements. Because here you will see that it moved during the Asian session. Then it consolidated, and then again it started to move again during the overlap of the London and New York, and then moved into New York. Here on Wednesday, it started during the London session, and again moved through the overlap, and kind of started tapering off as we went into the New York session. On Thursday, it started during the London session around 3 a.m. and then it moved all the way through New York before it started to consolidate. And this big impulse move to end the week started right before New York, so it's still kind of in London. Went through the overlap and then went through New York until it started to almost kind of consolidate, it looks like. So this can tell you a lot of information about your pair. Typically, you'll want to do a month to show you, to get an idea of what the pair really does and to really see some actual patterns. You want to go more than a week. I typically do a month. I found that is really a good amount of time to really see really good patterns and get a really good idea of when their pair moves. So I did do one for GJ because I like to trade the London pairs, or the GBP pairs, I should say. And as you can see, I did the same thing. This is what it looks like. This is what it's broken down. You want to label the days to make it clear what day it is. And I just made notes to see when the pair was moving and at what time. And the color-coded sessions make it easy for me to see, okay, this is typically moving during certain sessions. So this is GJ, which typically will move during London and Asian session. So if you can see, notice each day is moving during those sessions. So here there was an impulse, smaller impulses, but Thursday didn't look like it moved too much, but it was an impulse in the Asian session, and then it was again in the London, New York. Here was in the London session. On this day, it was from Asia and went through to London. Here, it started in the London and went through to the overlap of New York. Started into London and went through the overlap of New York. Thursday, we had an overlap in the London and New York session and went through to New York. So as you can see, you can start to see the pattern. And also, when you label the days and you start to go through the weeks, you can typically see what days that it is really good to trade these pairs. So as you can see, on Mondays, there's usually smaller impulses, but on days like Thursday and Tuesdays, there's bigger impulses. And on a Wednesday. So typically you would see most movement between Tuesday and Thursday for this pair. Depending on news and whatnot, you will see these big movements during Fridays to end it. Look at this big one on Tuesday. So that's typically what you want to do when you're back testing your pair, you want to make sure you want to look for patterns and what the price is doing. You want to look for impulse moves and when they are, and also what time and session they're in. And this will help you to learn more about your pair. Getting to know it is important because it helps you to know when you should be on the charts so that you're not looking at a chart all day. And also help you to determine when is the best time to put in for these trades. So I hope this was helpful for you. I call this my Mirroring Your Pair 2.0 because it added a little bit more sauce to it from the first video. Hopefully you seen some value, and I hope to see you in the next video. Okay, see ya. Bye.